So this is Thameside Studio, where I have my studio, and yeah, it's just up the river along a little bit from Thames Barrier, and we're just on the river now, which is a place I quite like to come and chill out, have a think, get some fresh air. I imagine a lot of the artists here would kind of say in some way the river maybe kind of creeps into their work or seeps into their thinking. I kind of look a lot at Tate and Lyle factory just over the river there. I think it makes me think a lot about sugar and kind of links, historical links to the slave trade and to kind of commerce and to philanthropic giving as well, which is kind of fed into cultural institutions that we know exist today. So maybe there's a piece of work in that somewhere. I did my BA in fine art, kind of broadly, but towards the end of my BA, I'd kind of started working a lot with print processes, or processes that I associated with printmaking in some respects. So I was working a lot with photocopying, thinking about text, photographic images. I was doing lots of etching. And I was working with sound as well, so recorded audio, and I was thinking a lot about kind of doubling processes and replication and degradation of imagery and repeats. And so when it kind of came to it, I actually thought that printmaking would be a really good course for kind of looking through some of those ideas or thinking about some of those ideas. Yeah, so I work a lot with archives, thinking a lot about kind of threads of narrative and collective memory and how that forms kind of histories. Often those histories that I'm kind of drawn to are more marginalised threads. And more recently, I was asked to do a commission as part of a larger project looking at a kind of historical figure called John Blank, who was a trumpeter in the courts of Henry VII and Henry VIII. So a Tudor musician and I guess a man of military standing as well. We have relatively little information about this individual who was of African heritage, but who was very present in the English courts in that Tudor period. So there's a document, a letter that's signed by Henry VIII, which is granting this pay rise. So yeah, we know that potentially he's, quite a proud man or a confident individual to kind of make that leap. I was thinking about where I would start with this, and I thought that the Black Cultural Archives is probably quite a good place to start. Len Garrison, who was one of the founders of the Black Cultural Archives, and some of his writings where he's asking kind of where are these like heroes and martyrs that are kind of present in the kind of Black British history. And he kind of concludes in this piece that they're very present, and that if we want to find them, we should actually just kind of look in the vaults of the British Museum, and kind of looking through and overturning that material, you kind of find these bits of narrative that maybe haven't been forefronted. So I started doing tours at the B&A, volunteering as an African heritage tour guide in the New Europe galleries, which kind of span the dates 1600 to 1815, thinking about an African presence in Europe at the time, or that's how I frame my tours. So I think I started doing the tours because I was interested in kind of what I could learn. And I've learnt loads about the presence of individuals of African heritage in Europe during that kind of vast time period. So there's a particular image that I often talk about as the second object of my tour, which is called the Ommegang. It's a huge painting and it's a bit of a kind of Where's Wally of different characters, different individuals celebrating a large kind of parade in the Spanish Netherlands, or what we now know as Brussels in Belgium. And so it's very metropolitan scene. I often kind of talk about there's 3 individuals who look to be of African heritage in that particular painting, and I often kind of draw upon them as kind of different examples of individuals who were active at the time in Europe. And that painting's from the early 1600s, so a bit later than John Blanc in the kind of Tudor courts in England. But I often kind of draw parallels between these individuals, so musicians in the courts, in the European courts, individuals with agency, who we don't often hear about so much as we hear kind of these stories of slavery or enslavement. In that respect, it was really exciting when Michael approached me with this John Blanc project, and it was a real opportunity to kind of consider some of those areas of history that I often hadn't touched on previously.